Welcome, everyone, to the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am your host, Gregg Schutze. This is episode 6 of the 2024 podcast series, where we take a look at the draft-eligible prospects and get you ready for the NFL draft. And I'll tell you what, week 0 of the college football season is this weekend. We've got 7 games on the slate. We're also taking a look at the conference breakdowns. We've taken a look at the SEC, both the Big 10 and Big 12, along with the ACC. And now, really, episode 6 is going to be dedicated to the Pac-12. The Conference of Champions, really the last year of its existence as we know it. We really don't know what's going to happen with the remaining teams within the Pac-12. We know that USC, UCLA are going to be moving on to the Big 10. Then you have Oregon and Washington following suit, so you'll have 4 teams making its way over to the Big 10. And then Arizona schools, both U of A, ASU, then Utah and Colorado, all moving to the Big 12, which means Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, Washington State really going to have to figure out where their futures will lie for 2024. But this podcast is really all about that swan song, if you will, with the Pac-12 conference. And I'll tell you what, this is a year that's really exciting. There are a lot of teams with a lot of talented players, and really I think this may be the quarterback conference this year. Virtually every team has a draft-eligible quarterback that we will be talking about. So we're going to go ahead and dive straight into the Pac-12, and then we're also going to take a look at each of the matchups for week 0 of the college football season. So let's jump right into things, and I think the first team that everyone has to be talking about is USC. Came within a game, that Utah Pac-12 championship, of actually making it to the college football playoff, and then we know what happened in the Cotton Bowl Classic, the 46-45 comeback victory by the Tulane Green Wave. And really, when you're talking about USC, you have to really start the conversation with Caleb Williams, the Heisman Trophy winner, 6'1", 218 pounds. This was a guy that transferred in from Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley, and over 66% completion percentage, 4,537 yards, 42 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Also had 382 yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground. And this is a guy, when you watch him play, he exudes that confidence, and the playmaking ability is just rare. When you watch him, you watch his ability to survey the field, locate his guys. Really, the athleticism and his ability to manipulate the pocket, to buy time and continue to extend plays, and then the arm talent, his ability to fit throws into tight windows, his ability to throw the football down the field. Really, if there's a quarterback that's as close coming out as Patrick Mahomes, it would be Caleb Williams. When I talked about Patrick Mahomes, when he was coming out of Texas Tech, he was one of those guys that, whether he was moving left, moving to his right, coming forward, backpedaling, you always knew that he was going to throw it with velocity, and he was looking to make a play. And that was the same thing with Caleb Williams. This was a guy against Utah on one leg because he had the hamstring injury, moving to his right, was able to throw essentially off of his back foot and throw the football a good 40-plus yards down the field to a wide-open Mario Williams. And just the playmaking ability is off the charts, the vision, and really he does a great job of even getting down and avoiding contact. The arm strength, like I said, is absolutely there. The ability to make those throws on the run and really not lose any velocity is tremendous. His completion percentage on the move and when plays break down is incredible. I think if there's anything, Caleb Williams actually can get better. And that's a scary proposition for opponents. But when you look at what Caleb Williams does, those layered throws over the linebacker in front of the safety, especially outside the numbers, that's where he struggled. Throwing the ball within the pocket, outside the numbers, down the field, you'd see him sail a lot of those throws, the inaccuracy there on those footballs. If he were to contain and actually get outside the pocket, when the play breaks down, extending the play, that's where he's at his best. But within the pocket, that's where you have to prove that you can get the job done. And I think that's still where Caleb Williams needs to have some of that development. I think he always focuses on the big play. He doesn't always take what the defense gives him. He'll have guys underneath that are open, and all he needs to do is check that football down, and they'll get a first down. They'll be able to extend drives. What Caleb Williams was doing was he was looking for that big play, Sometimes he wouldn't even come off of his primary receiver. He's looking for the guys down the field. But to his credit, I think he does go through his progressions. I think he does. There are a lot of times where receivers just weren't getting open. And so obviously at that point, he's got to create. He's got to try to extend the play as much as he can before he even pulls it to run. This is a guy, for all the movement that he was able to pull off and the ability to just avoid, duck, dive, the incredible contact balance for this guy, and then still be able to locate a target, fire a strike. It was uncanny what this guy was able to do. I look at Caleb Williams. I see him as the first overall pick. I mean, I think if everyone had to do it all over again, Patrick Mahomes would be the first quarterback taken in that draft, not Mitchell Trubisky. But that's really what I see with Caleb Williams. He just needs to continue to harness that. I think this is a guy. What he also does off the field is unreal. The Heisman Trophy. He wanted to make sure that if he was going to New York, all of his offensive linemen were going with him. This was a guy that bought into that Trojan family and the Beats headphones. Yes, he had the NIL deal, but that was something that he wanted to share with everyone. So not only did his teammates receive the Beats headphones, but anytime, whether it was the basketball team, both men's and women's, or any of the other programs that were going on to the NCAAs, really as a good luck gift, they would get something from him. Beats headphones, what have you. But this guy also the charitable work. Caleb Cares Foundation is a tremendous organization, really focused on the underprivileged children, and I love all the work that he does. And people think that it's just lip service, but this is a guy that truly believes in that cause, and that he can really make a difference. And so that's really what's impressive, is he is so mature beyond his years. I think what he does off the field, coupled with what he does on the field, makes him a guy that, look, any organization is going to want him on their team. I'm wondering if the Rams are tanking for Caleb. It kind of feels that way a little bit. I think Arizona might be in the mix as well, depending on how Kyler Murray plays in 2023. But Caleb Williams is not the only guy there at USC that's going to be draft eligible that we should be talking about. When you look at the receiver position, they bring in a guy like Dorian Singer to really take the place of Jordan Addison. 6 foot, 180 pounds, the junior. And it wasn't Jordan Addison who was the top Pac-12 receiver. It was actually Dorian Singer. And that's the thing, I think he's going to be a big play guy, going to be a weapon out on the outside. Excellent hands, the body control, over 1,100 yards through the air, 16.7 yards per reception, 6 touchdowns. He's probably going to be that go-to target, but Caleb Williams has a lot of weapons. He's got Super Mario Williams out there, 5'9", 185 pounds. The junior really burst onto the scene there at Oklahoma. I thought last year he was a guy that, Caleb Williams was looking to find guys to get the football to, and there were stretches where Mario Williams kind of disappeared. I think he needs to really emerge as one of those top weapons for Williams. Brendan Rice, the son of the GOAT Jerry, 6'3", 205, a senior. This was a guy who I thought struggled to, with concentration drops, really struggled to bring the ball in on a consistent basis. But down the stretch, towards the end of the season, this was a guy that you really saw start to step up, elevate his game, and I think he's a guy that actually has a shot now. He was a guy that for a while we really weren't sure what we were going to see out of him, and I'm really been impressed with what he was able to do towards the end of the year. Another guy, really, he's kind of splitting time with Kyron Ware-Hudson. He's 6'2", 215. He's kind of the breakout star, if you will, from spring ball and really fall camp as well. Only 15 catches this past season, but a guy that, like I said, he's kind of a on the depth chart. It's either Brendan Rice or Kyron Ware-Hudson. Going to be a redshirt sophomore, so he may very well decide to come back. But a guy that with a big year, who knows what can happen, when you're talking about receivers there at USC. Taj Washington, a slot receiver, a guy that, look, he burst onto the scene after some playing time there at Memphis, where he looked really good, was one of their standout receivers, decides to transfer to USC. And then last year he struggled with some drops as well. But I think towards the end of the season, he was another guy that really stepped up big in Jordan Addison's absence. So a lot of receivers to throw to, and I didn't even name off the fact that they've also got Zachariah Branch, they've got Deuce Robinson, the tight end / receiver, Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane, a lot of these freshmen, and so it's going to be interesting to see exactly how Lincoln Riley spreads the football around. I think Caleb Williams also going to benefit from the fact that Cliff Kingsbury is there as an offensive coach, a guy that's really going to be able to develop Caleb Williams that much more, a guy that's seen, from Kyler Murray to Patrick Mahomes, he's seen a lot of these guys and been able to help them with their development. So I think having him in that quarterback room along with Lincoln Riley is going to go a long way, for Caleb Williams, but also for this offense. And then when you look at this offensive line, this is an interesting group. Jonah Monheim, 6'5", 295, the junior, played right tackle a season ago. They thought maybe he'd move inside to guard, but he's actually going to be their left tackle. And not only did he not give up a sack the entire year a season ago, 2 of the transfers that they brought in through the transfer portal also haven't given up a sack. Now there's Jarrett Kingston, formerly of Washington State. He's 6'4", 300, a little lacks ideal length, which is why he's going to be playing right guard. And then Michael Tarquin, coming from Florida, a guy that can play left or right tackle. He'll be the right tackle though, 6'5", 310 pounds. Those are 2 guys that are definitely draft eligible. And when I look at this group, really a lot of veterans. I think they're really going to hold up for Caleb Williams. And then Justin Dedich is kind of their emotional leader, 6'2", 205 there at center, a guy that can play both center and guard as well. But you look at the offensive line, they're going to be blocking for a couple of running backs as well. They love, Lincoln Riley and his offense loves that guard tackle pull on those counter plays. And one of the guys that they're going to have in there is Austin Jones. Now, Austin Jones is a guy, he's not going to be someone who's going to be flashy, kind of like Travis Dye even before the knee injury, a priority free agent there with the Jets. Austin Jones, I don't think is going to get drafted, but he's a guy that has done everything that the Trojans have asked him to do. Over 1,800 yards in his career, but 92 receptions as well. Phenomenal pass catcher. Really the biggest thing that he needs to work on is as a pass blocker. But when Travis Dye went down to injury, Austin Jones was there, stepped up. His playing time had kind of been reduced, but he stepped up in a huge way. I think this is a guy that could be a big leader for any team, and I think he'll at least get a shot with the program, at the next level. Be interesting to see if he can find to work his way into a practice squad. But Marshawn Lloyd, I think, is the guy that we're going to be talking about as a potential prospect. I've got him in my top 10 at the running back spot, 5'9", 215 pounds, a bit of a bowling ball between the tackles, excellent contact balance. He's going to run through you a little bit, has speed on the outside, played in only 9 games a season ago, 573 yards, 18 receptions as well, a guy that can catch the football out of the backfield, can be that weapon, better pass protector than Austin Jones as well. So that offensive line will be blocking for Caleb Williams. I think they're going to be a lot more physical in the running game as well. So this offense is primed to have a big year. Tons of weapons for Caleb Williams. I'm super excited to see exactly what's going to happen there. And really the biggest thing that's keeping USC from being a bona fide playoff contender is that defense. Alex Grinch, this was a team that, look, they led the country in turnover margin at plus 22 with 29 takeaways. But that defense was just awful. 8th worst in the FBS in yards allowed per play. 94th nationally in scoring defense. Alex Grinch is on a major hot seat. Really what they did, and hats off to Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch, they overhauled this defense through the transfer portal. So they bring in a couple of sophomores that we'll be talking about next year in Anthony Lucas, the 6'5", 270-pound sophomore defensive end, and then Bear Alexander, a D tackle, 6'3", 305, an athletic freak at the position. Transferred in from Texas A&M and Georgia, respectively. But one guy that they brought in from Arizona that I do want to mention is Keon Bars. This is a guy that I think I was looking at as a potential pro prospect at Arizona. 6'3", 295, physical at the point of attack. He's just a year removed from having a 5-sack season there in 2021. A guy that I think can push the pocket and get after the quarterback just a little bit. So I'm anxious to see what he can do there at that D tackle spot. Another guy that people are talking about potentially having a big year could be Corey Foreman. the former #1 overall recruit, a guy that came to USC with a lot of expectation coming out of Centennial in Corona. He's 6'5", about 265. I think this was someone who, with all that expectation, just hasn't lived up to the hype just yet. Alex Grinch really wanted to continue to work with him, continue the development. I think he's a little bit behind in terms of the development there. I thought, the first year with Todd Orlando, he really struggled. You saw towards the end of the season, though, he started to put things together, dropping into coverage with a big, huge interception there against UCLA to seal the win there for them. So he's a guy that I think everyone's rooting for there at USC. It's just going to be interesting to see how everything plays out. Another transfer is Jaleel Muhammad, coming in from Georgia State. He's 6'2", 230 pounds, a rush end, a guy that, look, in 2021 had 5 sacks. This past season, just 5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. But he's going to be a guy that they're going to be relying on to get after the quarterback a little bit. And I'll be curious to see what he can do. There's a lot of talk about the speed coming off the edge. He just hasn't really had much of a chance to put all of that together and really showcase what he can do. So I'll be curious to see if he can really put a stamp on things there at USC. 6'1", 240, a senior. Another senior and another transfer that comes in is Mason Cobb. He's 6 foot, 230 pounds. The name sounds familiar. He was the leading tackler there at Oklahoma State. 96 tackles, 13 going for loss. But this was a guy, for as many tackles as he made, I think there were about another 25, 30 tackles that he left on the table. So this is a guy that, for a team like USC that's missed a ton of tackles, just watch that Tulane game and it would just make you sick how many tackles they were missing. They bring in a guy like Mason Cobb. He's going to be a guy that's flying around and making plays, but he's got to make sure that he's bringing his feet, that his head is up, that he's wrapping guys up, and that he's driving through the ball carrier. Otherwise, they're going to be in for some trouble. Another interesting guy is Eric Gentry, 6'6", 205 pounds, playing inside linebacker, a guy that really looks more like he should be like an Isaiah Simmons and potentially play at the safety spot. But Gentry, he transferred in last year from Arizona State, and the length is ridiculous. And really, I think he played his best football at the beginning of the season. Then he injures his ankle, and I'm wondering how much of that really factored into things. This is a guy, 71 tackles, 4 going for loss, 2 sacks. When he came back from the ankle injury was really where he struggled the most, really being able to bring guys down in the open field, wrap up, and I wonder how much of that was not really being able to bring those feet and put himself in a position to make a play. Shane Lee, the senior linebacker that transferred in from Alabama, he's really a 2-down linebacker. He proved that all he can really do is play the run. He struggles in coverage mightily, so that's really going to hamper his draft stock quite a bit because he cannot cover a running back out of the backfield. He really struggles in that area. The corners, it's going to be Sierra Wright. It's going to be Damani Jackson, a much ballyhooed 5-star corner out of Modern Day. They're both sophomores, so they won't be draft eligible, but a guy who is Kalen Bullock. 6'3", 190 pounds, the junior. This is a guy that I think teams are going to have to know where he is on the field at all times. Number 7 is the guy that plays center field with the best of them. 7 interceptions in his career there at USC, including 5 this past season. Excellent range over the top. The instincts are ridiculous. He's a guy that if you don't look him off and don't hold him and allow him to get over the top, he's going to make a play on the ball. The ball skills are evident, and he's a guy that I think could end up being the top safety in this draft when it's all said and done. They did get Christian Roland Wallace, a guy that I think could end up playing nickel for them, 6 foot 205, transfer from Arizona. USC's motto going into 2023 is the job's not finished. I think that's where ultimately they need to win that Pac-12 and get to that college football playoff. This is likely going to be Caleb Williams' last year. Trojans need to put it all together, and really, frankly, if that defense lets them down again, then Alex Grinch is going to be out of a job. So who's the team that's most likely to compete with USC for that crown? I think it's going to be Washington. Oregon's going to be in that mix. Utah is a team that really has had USC's number of late, but I think Washington is the team that has the most depth. It has talent on both sides of the football. So when I look at Washington, obviously we've talked about the quarterbacks. Michael Penix Jr. was the top passer in the Pac-12 conference. No, it wasn't Caleb Williams. It was Michael Penix Jr., number 2 in the country in passing yards with 4,641, 31 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. This was a guy that, when you talk about those throws outside the numbers, to the wide side, the accuracy, putting it on a line for his receivers, just the tremendous arm strength. The arm has never been a question. I think he relies on that arm strength a little bit too much, trusts it a little too much, and tries to fit the ball into some windows that just aren't there. So he needs to cut down on some of those mistakes. Also needs to prove that he's all the way back and all the way healthy. Had that knee injury when he was at Indiana. He was able to prove that he can make it through an entire season this past year, but can he do it again? That's going to be a big question mark. If he can, I think this is a guy, I think people are split. Some people have him coming off the board late on day 3 because of the injuries. I think that this is a guy that could probably come off the board anywhere somewhere in the middle of round 1 to towards the end of day 2. That's really where I think his window is going to be. Again, granted, he's got to stay healthy. Now, offensively, weapons galore as well. Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk. 3 just absolutely just bona fide stars at the receiver position. Romo Odunze is probably the best in terms of guys that we're talking about for the next level. Odunze to me is a first-round wide receiver, over 1,100 yards a season ago, 15.3 yards per reception, 7 touchdowns. The guy that can get vertical in a hurry, has that kind of track speed that you just can't teach. Out of Bishop Gorman, won the state title in the 200 meters at 21.25 and the 4x1 41.36. Thank you, Bruce Feldman, with the athletic, the freaks list. Had all of this listed there. 4.3, 4.40, 37.1 vertical leap. Tremendous athlete, and a guy that I think is going to be a weapon there on the outside. Jalen McMillan, another guy that went over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns on the year. I think when I look at Jalen McMillan, I think he's a guy that's probably going to do most of his damage from the slot. A guy that is a weapon, a guy that can run, not only get vertical, but an excellent route runner as well. And then Jalen Polk is a 6'2", 205 sophomore receiver, a guy that can play both over the middle and on the outside, just under 17 yards per reception, so it has that big play potential. Then you look at the offensive line, and I think the tackles are both guys that we could be talking about for this year's draft class. But they do have to replace Jackson Kirkland, Corey Luciano, and Henry Benivalu. The interior linemen, those guys were critical to the success a season ago. That's where you worry about Michael Penix Jr. is that protection. Can he stay healthy? That's going to be a huge question mark. But one thing that is for certain, when you talk about the left tackle, Troy Fautanu, 6'4", 312, a junior, good old Bruce Feldman, noted that this is a guy that can bench press 400 pounds, ran a 5'1", 40. Vertical leap is right around 30.5 inch. So you see the explosiveness to him. Moves pretty well in pass protection, but I think the physicality is really what you see. And for me, I don't think he has that ideal length to be a tackle, but I think you kick him inside to guard. I think he could be a top 5 or 6 guard in this year's draft. The other guy to mention is Roger Rosengarten. He's 6'6", 303, a redshirt sophomore. I think he's a guy, when I look at Roger Rosengarten, he can be an absolute stud there at Washington. Is he going to enter the draft? I don't think it's likely that he will, although I think he's poised for a huge year. But when I look at him and what he can bring, there's that chance that we could see. Look, he was a freshman All-America, first team by College Football News, a guy that is going to hold down that right side. A smart kid, also Pac-12 honor roll. I think the sky's the limit there for Roger Rosengarten. What I'd love to see is for him to come back, potentially move over to that left side after Troy Fautanu moves on to the next level, and really work his way into day 2 and potentially day 1 consideration for the draft. Now, defensively, this is where things I think really get exciting, because up front they've got some studs, absolute studs. Braylon Trice, 6'4", 267, to me is a first-round pick, and I don't think there's any question about it. A guy that just he knows how to get after. He's not overly twitchy. I think that's one of the things that you notice when you watch his game is, there is a little bit of stiffness to him, but definite, can bend a little bit. And the power is absolutely there. 6'4", 260 pounds. A season ago, 12 tackles for loss, 9 sacks. He's going to be a guy that they're going to rely upon to get after the quarterback. This is a guy, look, Pro Football Focus noted that he was a national leader with 67 pressures. So he's a guy that just knows how to get after the quarterback and make plays in the backfield. Another guy to mention is Zion Tupuola-Fatui. ZTF, look, 6'4", 251 pounds. This is a guy that was a 2020 All-American. And the biggest thing with Zion is just his health. Can he stay on the field? That's really the biggest question mark. Another guy who's 6'4" and 260 pounds. But when you look at it, played in 1 game in 2018, 7 in 2019, just 3 in 2020, the COVID-shortened year, and 2 in 2021. But the big thing in 2020, in those 3 games, had 7 sacks. And that's really, I think, the thing that was most staggering, and really what teams took notice of was that playmaking ability and the playmaking potential that you saw there in those games. Had 2 sacks against Oregon and Arizona, and then had another 3-sack performance against Utah to go along with 6 tackles. 2 forced fumbles in the game against Oregon State, so a guy that could be a game wrecker. He just can't stay on the field and can't seem to stay healthy. This last year, actually played in 13 games, 5.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. The medicals really need to check out with him. That's the biggest concern more than anything else. Tuli Nasanoa is a big man. 6'1", 302 pounds, but a guy that he is difficult to move off the point of attack. He's going to be someone that I think they're going to be relying upon there in the middle. 6-year senior. Keep an eye out for him. Then you have inside linebacker Edefon Olufosio, 6'1", 235 pounds, active linebacker. Played in only 5 games a season ago, just 10 tackles. But a guy that when he's healthy, can be very active. The problem is, much like Zion, struggled to stay on the field. And that's really going to be the biggest thing is if these guys can stay on the field and make plays, Washington's going to be right there and give a lot of teams trouble. They do play USC. They also play Oregon. And so there's going to be some of those tough games that they have to go in. They're going to be traveling to East Lansing to take on Michigan State. So Washington just needs to have these guys stay healthy. And if they do, I think they're poised for a huge year. In the secondary, you're going to have Dominique Hampton, and a guy that I think has a chance to have a big year. He's 6'1", 218 pounds, the strong safety. This is a guy, he's an all Pac-12 performer, and a guy that I think has tremendous range. He's the guy that's going to come up and hit you in the box. They also get Jabbar Muhammad from Oklahoma State through the transfer portal. This is a guy that I think can absolutely be a star for them. Jabbar Muhammad, he's only a junior, 5'10", 185 pounds. But look, Washington's known for having those corners, and this is the next guy that I think could step in and be the next in line. 9 pass breakups a season ago for the Cowboys. He's going to be their starter there on the outside. And then Asa Turner is a veteran presence, 6'3", 206. He's a guy that, at that free safety position, roaming over the top. The big thing for me when I'm watching him, because he is so tall, is the hips. Is he stiff in those hips, or is he a guy that can be really fluid with the transitions? That's something that you want to keep an eye out for. 6 interceptions in his career there with the Huskies. I think Washington, they're going to put up a lot of points. I didn't mention the running back spot. Cameron Davis, the junior, went down to a knee injury, so he's going to be out. But they get Dylan Johnson from Mississippi State. I think that's a huge pickup there. So that's going to be something that they're going to have to keep an eye out for. There's going to be a lack of depth at that running back spot, but Dylan Johnson's the guy that I think could end up having a huge year for them as well. So Oregon is the other team that I think we're really talking about knocking on the door against USC. Obviously, when you have a guy like Bo Nix, things can definitely pick up for the Ducks, and I think Dan Lanning's really excited for what can happen. Bo Nix, if you heard me talk last year, he was a guy that I didn't understand the hype. What I saw there at Auburn, all that pressure that was on him, I just did not see a quarterback that had that pro potential. But He transfers to Oregon, and this is a guy that was playing free. You can just see that he was just comfortable in his own skin and was playing a lot looser, and that's really the thing that I think was so impressive. 6'3", 214, 71.9% completion percentage, just under 3,600 yards, 29 touchdowns, did have those 7 interceptions. When he gets outside the pocket, the accuracy, he loses that a little bit, but he's a dual threat, a guy that's looking to make plays outside the pocket, a guy that, on the run, is going to make plays with his legs. 14 touchdowns a season ago, 510 yards, 5.7 yards per carry. Had a better QBR than Michael Penix Jr. last season. So I think he's poised for another year, big year, and a guy that I think could potentially be that number 3 quarterback off the board. Penix Jr. is going to be in that mix as well. I think Bo Nix will be there. You also have Quinn Ewers and J.J. McCarthy. But if Oregon wants to make some noise in the Pac-12, then Bo Nix is going to have a Heisman-type performance. Running game, you've got Bucky Irving. I think Bucky is going to be a top running back in this year's draft class. 5'10", 190 pounds, transferred in from Minnesota, played just 1 year there, just under 700 yards on the ground. Was over 1,000 yards with the Ducks, 31 receptions as well. This is a guy that has the speed on the outside. He's not the biggest guy. Like I said, 5'10", 190 pounds, but a guy that can be dynamic in the open field. You love the athleticism. You just see his ability to make plays when he's in space. And I think he's a guy that we can expect big things from on the ground. Then you look at the receivers, and I think Troy Franklin is a guy that you have to be talking about. Troy Franklin, to me, is a receiver that has a chance to be a first-round receiver. If not, then he's going to come off the board early on day 2. But when you're talking about Troy Franklin, he's a guy that has that big play potential, a guy that can get vertical for you. He's not the biggest guy in terms of the build, but he is tall, 6'2", 170 pounds, excellent catch radius, 891 yards receiving and 9 touchdowns a season ago. He'll be a guy to keep an eye on. Chris Hudson was his running mate a season ago. The junior is back. Then they also bring in Trayshawn Holden from Alabama, a guy that I don't think really lived up to the hype and the expectation there at Bama. So I think he's hoping to kind of resurrect his career. I think Hudson's going to be more of the slot guy. Holden, 6'3", 208, a junior, much like Troy Franklin, has a lot of catch radius is huge. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that plays out. When you look at it, their offensive coordinator, Will Stein, coming from UTSA, I think, he's going to look for a lot of ways to get the receiver the football, to allow Bucky Irving to make plays a la Sincere McCormick. And then you have a quarterback like Bo Nix. You look at what Frank Harris meant to that Roadrunner offense. I think you're going to see something similar there. They've got to replace Kenny Dillingham, and I think this is a great fit to be able to do that. When you look at the offensive line, I think that's really where the question mark is, because there's one guy that I guess you could call a starter, Marcus Harper, but I don't even know if he's going to be starting. There's Jackson Powers Johnson, who is also battling out for that starting role, so that's going to be a huge question mark. Is he a guy that's going to if Jackson Powers Johnson ends up taking over that starting spot, then you may not really have a returning starter on this group. Steve Jones, the right guard, is huge. He's 6'5", 340 pounds. You get a couple of transfers. Junior Angelau, the 6'6", 320-pounder from Texas. He's a guy that can be a road grader. And Johnny Cornelius was one of the more sought-after guys in the transfer portal, coming from Rhode Island, 6'5", 310. He'll be the right tackle, and I think there's a lot of potential there with him. He may be a year away before I think he can really make some noise, but his running mate is going to be Josh Connerly, a guy that played some tight end actually for them, 6'4", 294, only a sophomore. So there's a lot of potential. It's just a question of whether or not this group can really come together in their first year, really playing together. At tight end, they've got Terrence Ferguson, 6'5", 255, only a junior, but a guy that I think was a weapon, over the middle, down the seam, and a guy that I think can block a little bit as well. When you look at the defense, I think the first name that has to come to mind is Brandon Dorlus. Brandon Dorlus is a guy that we should be talking about as a a guy that should be taken in the first 2 days of the draft. Likely not the day one, but I think he's a guy that could be in a second round, third round conversation. A guy that's played defensive tackle, defensive end for them, but 20.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. A guy that is stout at the point of attack, can get into the backfield and make some plays, put some pressure there on the quarterback. Casey Rogers was a transfer from Nebraska. He's a guy, he's got excellent size for them at the defensive end spot, 6'5" and 295 pounds. Jordan Birch is the guy that's really going to be interesting. 6'6", 275, the junior transferred in from South Carolina, and I'll tell you what, he's a guy that is really going to be interesting to see how things go. Last year, 3.5 sacks, 7.5 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups, but the length is what's ridiculous with this guy. He's got tremendous length, and yet this is a guy that's also squatting 685, sumo deadlift at 685. Thank you, Bruce Feldman, for that, plus the 34-inch vertical leap. But 6'6", 295. This is a guy, though, that he's a former 5-star, and you wanted to see him just be so explosive coming off the edge. We just haven't seen him quite live up to all of that potential, and that's the thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do there at Oregon. Can he finally elevate his game enough to be a difference maker? Now, I mentioned Dorless. He's on Feldman's group. The thing that's just incredible is this is a guy that is an athletic freak. So is Casey Rogers. Casey Rogers bench press 505, 365-pound jerk, power clean 375, back squat at 765. Similar numbers for Dorless to Birch. So you've got a lot of strength there along the defensive front. You just want to see if these guys can wreak havoc behind the line of scrimmage. That's really going to be the big question mark. A season ago, Dorless just 2.5 sacks. Not much of a presence there from Casey Rogers. So you can do all the work you want in the weight room, but if you can't actually translate that to the field, then that's obviously going to be cause for concern. Oregon 10-3 ultimately on the year, lost to Oregon State in their final game, also lost to Washington, and of course got blown out by Georgia 49-3 to start out the year. Another guy that they're going to be really relying upon is that linebacker Justin Jacobs, 6'4", 236 pounds, comes in from Iowa, and this was a guy, look, he got a lot of playing time next to Jack Campbell and Seth Benson. Nick Neiman, I think, was the other linebacker there. I think Jacobs was kind of the fourth linebacker, but he has tremendous size, had 53 tackles in 2021, knee injury, only allowed him to play in 2 games this past year. He's a guy that I think Oregon is going to need to have a big year there at the linebacker spot, especially when you had a guy like Justin Flo just struggling to stay healthy. You look at the strong safety spot, they've got Evan Williams, 6'1", 194 pounds, transfer from Fresno State. If you remember from my podcast a season ago, talking about the potential there from Evan Williams. I like the fact that he's moving to Oregon. I thought that Fresno State, you got to see some of that from him. A guy that likes to play around the line of scrimmage. 11 tackles for loss in his career, had 90 tackles in 2021, 12 pass breakups, 4 interceptions in his career, including 3 in 2021. I thought there was kind of a step down in 2022. Now he has a final year moving on to Oregon. I'm expecting big things from him. And then, of course, you've got the cornerback, Triquez Bridges. He's going to be the playmaker there, 6'3", 192 pounds, only a junior, but you love the length. He's a guy that I think everyone's going to be looking at as kind of the alpha there on the back end of that defense. He's got tremendous length, tremendous range, that the ball skills are evident. Is he a guy that can play corner? You have to move him to safety. 3 interceptions a season ago, so he's a guy that I think the team is really going to be relying upon to make some big plays. After the Ducks, I think the next team that we really have to be talking about is Utah, right? The Utah Utes, very physical team, gritty. I think they really embody not only their coach, Kyle Whittingham, but also their quarterback, Cam Rising. I think if you're a Trojan fan, Trojan alum like myself, it feels like Cam Rising has been there forever. This is a guy that has just continued to impress. This is a guy, look, Utah back-to-back Pac-12 champions. He's going to have Brant Keithy and Devon Vele back, his go-to guys. 5,500 career passing yards, 46 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. The dude's a gamer. 6'2", 220 pounds against USC in the Pac-12 championship. Took a huge hit. Helmet goes flying. He gets up and is ready to go. He's just a tough dude. He spent the offseason, tore that ACL in the Rose Bowl on January 2nd. So that's really going to be the question mark, is the durability. Where is he at there? But man, when he's healthy, the dude is just so tough. I think they may struggle a little bit running the football. I think Quinton Jackson, the converted quarterback, is a guy that got to see some playing time there in the final games. Really had a great year there against, great game against USC in the Pac-12 championship. They have Quinton Jackson is going to be the guy, but they don't have a Tavion Thomas that they can really rely upon. So I think the running game, they could potentially struggle. But when you've got a big dude at 6'2", 228 like Jackson, I think good things can happen. Devon Vele on the outside, I mentioned him already, 6'5", 210 pounds, athletic. Has a tremendous catch radius. A guy that has that long speed. Takes him a little while to get up to speed, but once he does, he's going to find a way to get by you and make some plays over the top. Excellent catch radius, like I mentioned. The hands, the body control, 55 catches, 695 yards, 5 touchdowns a season ago. And then you've got Brant Kuithe. Brant Kuithe is only 6'2", 220, but man, this is a dude that just continues to make plays. Tore the ACL. Season was cut short, was having a great year playing next to Dalton Kincaid, the eventual first rounder. But when you look at Kuithe, what he did in 2021, 611 receiving yards, that was after he just played in 5 games there in 2020. 2019, another 600-yard performance. So when you look at it, has the injury, he's going to come back. I'm expecting another 600-plus yard performance. The big question mark is going to be the medicals. How does the knee check out? How does that hold up? And really a team, he is an undersized tight end, so where does a team feel like they can place him? I think the 40 time, some of the measurements, those are going to be key for him in terms of really what that draft stock looks like. Thomas Yasmin, the other tight end, 6'5", 250 pounds. He's a guy to keep an eye on as well. Probably a better blocker, but a decent receiver as well for them. I think the guy that really is going to set the stage on the offensive line is going to be Sateoa Laumea. He's 6'4", 315, only a junior, a guy that's going to be physical at the point of attack. He may play left tackle, may play right tackle. I think he also has the ability to play along the interior of the line. I think that's ultimately going to be his home at the next level. He and Keaton Bills, the 6'4", 319-pound left guard, are going to be the two guys up front for them to, I think for us to really keep an eye on. I think when you look at this defense, obviously Clark Phillips, the third, the big ball hawk on the outside. You lose him. They bring in Miles Battle, who's played in a ton of games for Ole Miss. I think 45 games or something like that I saw. 6'4", 210 pounds. He's the guy that they're going to be looking at to be the difference maker there on the outside. A guy that 16 pass breakups, 2 interceptions in his career, has tremendous length. He's going to be a guy that they're really going to be relying upon to elevate his game. I think really though the guy to keep an eye out for is Cole Bishop, the 6'2", 206-pound strong safety. He's the guy that's going to come up and hit you, tough as nails. Returner, led the team in tackles with 83. And a guy that's, like I said, he's just tough as nails. He's going to keep coming after you, looking to really get in your kitchen, and he's going to deliver some big hits on you, that's for sure. And then the guy up front that's going to be physical is the all Pac-12 defensive tackle, Junior Tafuna, 6'3", 304, only a junior, but a guy that, again, he's tough as nails, and he's going to really be putting a hat on a hat. I think Van Fillinger, Karane Reed, there are a couple of pass rushers that each had 5 sacks a season ago from the linebacker positions. So those would be 2 guys to kind of keep an eye out for as well. Can they put consistent pressure on the quarterback is going to be a huge question mark, and I think that's really going to be Utah. I think with Cam Rising, they're going to be able to sustain drives, but can that defense make enough plays to get off the field and let Cam Rising do his thing? Again, as long as that knee stays healthy and he's able to get back and on the field. I think after that, you got to talk about Oregon State, the Beavers. You love what Jonathan Smith has been able to do with that team. 10-3 a season ago, 6-3 in Pac-12 play, lost to USC and Utah back-to-back weeks, September 4th and October 1st, and then again against Washington by 3 on November 4th. And then they closed out with 4 straight wins, including a 30-3 convincing win over Florida in the Las Vegas Bowl. And they get DJ Uiagalelei transferring in, 6'4", 251 pounds. This was a guy who struggled a season ago, lost his starting job to Cade Klubnik there at Clemson, but I think he really lost the confidence. That was the biggest thing that I think that you saw from him. A 59.8% completion percentage guy in his career, over 5,600 yards passing, 36 touchdowns with 7 interceptions. That's really, he's got to cut down on the mistakes. A guy that just, Oregon State's going to have to put him in a position to allow him to make some plays from within the pocket. They've got to protect him, but he's also got to make sure that he's not rushing his throws, that he's looking off defenders, that he's taking what the defense gives him, and that he's not so erratic with the throws. This is a guy that I think they need to kind of clean up some of the footwork with him. I think Jonathan Smith, as a former quarterback of the Beavers himself, is going to help with that. But DJ, look, 545 yards on the ground, 7 touchdowns a season ago. For as big as he is, he's a guy that moves really well. I think he has that going for him. The running back is going to be Damian Martinez, 6', 230, big dude, 982 yards on the ground, 7 touchdowns. There's a lot to like there. Silas Bolden is an exciting receiver. Only 5'8", very diminutive, only a junior. The returning receiver leader is Anthony Gould, 457 yards and 3 touchdowns. Another guy who's only 5'8" and 160 pounds. So they've got some really small receivers as their number 1 targets. So I think that's something that we're going to have to definitely keep an eye out for. Are these going to be guys that can hold up there on the outside? They also get Cal transfer, Jermaine Terry II. He'll be someone that we want to keep an eye on for sure as well. This is a team that's going to want to run the ball as often as possible. I mean, you look at Damian Martinez, was a Pac-12 Offensive Freshman of the Year. Deshaun Fenwick, Jan Griffin, a couple of guys that can really run the football well. And that's really says a lot for this offensive line. It's a veteran group. They return all 5 starters. Joshua Gray, their left tackle, 6'4", 305. He's a guy, I said guard because I think that's going to be where he's going to be next year. No sacks given up. Just lacks that ideal length, but a guy that moves very well and climbs to the second level in the run game. Does that with ease. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Joshua Gray can do. But then you have Taliese Fuaga there on the outside, an all Pac-12 performer at the right tackle spot. 6'6", 325 pounds. He's a guy that can move in as a potential top 10 offensive tackle. All Pac-12 performer, as I said a season ago. Very physical at the point of attack, and a guy that's pretty light on his feet on the outside. Those are going to be the 2 guys that are going to anchor this offensive line. And again, a very veteran group. Defensively, this is a team that really, last season they led the conference in total defense, just 332.8 yards per game. They lose their 2 corners, and I think that's really the biggest thing. You lose Rajon Wright and you lose Alex Austin to the NFL. You also lose Omar Spates to LSU. So that's huge. You wanted to be able to keep him if you could. He and Avery Roberts were a dynamic duo there at the linebacker spot. But the guy that I really have enjoyed watching is Ketan Oladapo. 6'1", 212 pounds, the safety, returning tackler, leader with 80. Very versatile guy, first team all Pac-12 performer, a guy that flies around and makes plays, sure tackler, a lot of fun to watch. He'll be the guy that I think has the most pro potential in this year's group of performers there for the Beavers, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do there. The Beavers, I think they're steady Eddies, man. They've got Isaac Hodgins, an undersized defensive end. They got James Rawls, who's 6'2", 280 at defensive tackle, and Sione Lolohea, a guy that I think has a chance to be a star in the Pac-12. who's 6'3", 263, playing the other defensive end spot. Want to see what he can do. Can they turn him loose and allow him to make some plays behind the line of scrimmage? So I think the Beavers, they're one of those teams. They end up sneaking up on people. They end up winning a lot of games that even maybe they shouldn't have. But they're a very well-coached team, and any team that has to travel to Corvallis, that's a stadium and a crowd where anything can really happen. I think next you have to talk about the UCLA Bruins. UCLA, what's going to happen at the quarterback spot? There's Ethan Garbers, there's Colin Schlee, who transferred in from Kent State. It sounds like it's going to be the freshman Dante Moore. This is a guy that's going to be 6'3", 210 pounds. He's really a dual threat guy there for Chip Kelly. Colin Schlee is another guy that's going to bring some of that to the table as well. But the guy that they really bring in is that they've replacing Zach Charbonnet with another dude that's just going to bring the hammer, and that's Carson Steele, transferring in from Ball State. 1,000-yard rusher from a season ago, 6'1", 215 pounds, over 1,500 yards on the ground, 14 touchdowns, also had 29 receptions, pretty good pass blocker as well, pretty complete running back, a guy that has some speed, not the most nimble laterally, but he's a guy that's can make that one cut to make you miss, and then he'll run over you, and then he's got the speed to go the distance. I think Carson Steele is a guy that Pac-12, the Pac-12 is really going to have to get to know, and they'll know who he is very quickly. He's got those flowing locks, looks like Thor. Bruce Feldman has him on the freaks list. 450-pound bench press, squatted 685, vertical leap 35 inches, clocked at 20.96 miles per hour. So the speed is absolutely there as well. He's a dude that is a physical performer coming downhill. If you got to watch him there at Ball State, it was a lot of fun. I think he was, fourth in the FBS in rushing, if I'm not mistaken. In the passing attack, you look at the receivers, I think that's really where they've got some holes. They've got some guys that are versatile, but I think the guy that really is going to come in from Cal and make some plays for them is going to be J. Michael Sturdivant. He's only a sophomore, but a guy that was a weapon on the outside. I thought he was one of the bright spots there for Cal a season ago. 6'3", 200, over 700 yards through the air and 7 touchdowns. He'll be probably the main target there for Moore, Schlee, Garbers, or whoever else is going to be playing the quarterback position. The tight end spot's going to be manned by the junior Maliki Mataveo, transferred in from Oregon. Keep an eye out for him there. I think on the offensive line, they're bringing in some new guys, and that's really going to be something. It's going to be questionable. Can this group really come together? A lot of transfers all the way around in the Pac-12, but you've got Kadare Kunta, 6'6", 306-pound transfer from ODU. Spencer Holtage from Purdue, 6'5", 310. I think he's got some potential there. And then obviously you've got the center, Duke Clemens, 6'3", 302. He's the guy that I think has a chance to work his way into day 3 of the draft. But when we're talking about the defensive side of the football, I think the guy that everyone has to get excited about is Liatu Latu. Right? I mean, this is a guy that just always seemed to be living in opposing backfields. A guy that really we thought was going to retire due to injury, concussions, and such there at Washington. Ultimately transferred to UCLA for the 2022 season. 12 tackles for loss, 10.5 sacks. A guy that just always seemed to be making plays. That was really one of the big things that we were talking about. A guy that just always seemed to be living in opposing backfields. A guy that was in the top 2 or 3 in pressures. Always just seemed to be moving forward. You love his ability to dip the inside shoulder and turn the corner. Excellent hand usage. Bends pretty well. Really the biggest thing is going to be the medicals and how that checks out. But he's a guy that I think has a chance to be a first-round prospect. I think you've got the Murphy brothers that you also have to be talking about. Guys that you're going to have to keep an eye on. Grayson and Gabriel Murphy, both right around 6'3", 260 pounds or so. They're both juniors, but guys that I think UCLA is really relying upon to take them to the next level. Grayson, 6'2", 235. Let's see, transferred in from North Texas. 8.5 sacks, 14.5 going for loss for the Mean Green there in 2021. Follows that up with 9 tackles for loss and 5 sacks for the Bruins. And then his brother Gabriel, was no slouch either. Gabriel Murphy, a little undersized, 6'2", 238, but at North Texas, 12.5 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. Didn't have as much success there at UCLA in his first year, but these are two guys that I think everyone's going to be relying upon to have huge years there for the Bruins. Darius Muasau, the linebacker in the middle, also a senior. He's going to be a guy that is going to have to really lead a linebacking group that they bring in Oluwafemi Oladejo from Cal. He's the guy that we got to talk about here in just one sec. But Muasau, he's 6'1", 230, 91 tackles a season ago. Now, I mentioned Oluwafemi Oladejo, and he's a guy that I thought was a playmaker there at Cal. And Femi, right around 6'3", I think he's up to 255, up from 240 a season ago. 91 tackles last year, 4.5 going for loss. He was a guy that always seemed to be around and make plays around the football. So I think that duo of he and Muasau patrolling the middle of that defense is really going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think a guy that's going to have potential is Devin Kirkwood on the outside, 6'3", 194, only a junior, so the corner could decide to come back for another season. The senior to watch out for in the secondary is going to be Kenny Churchwell, the free safety, 6'2", 190 pounds. So he'll be a guy that I think they're also going to be relying upon on the back end of their defense. So next on the list, I think we have to go up to the Palouse, talk about Wazoo, Washington State. We've got another quarterback that is going to be a draft-eligible prospect, and that's Cam Ward, 6'2", 215 pounds, a guy that really burst onto the scene. Everyone talking about him from Incarnate Word. What was he going to look like? How was his game going to translate? And I thought he moved in pretty well there for the Cougs. 64% completion percentage, over 3,200 yards, 23 touchdowns, did have the 9 interceptions, struggled really throwing the football at times, making some poor decisions. Escapability was one of the things that you definitely saw with him in the pocket. I thought the precision on some of the deeper throws was where he really struggled, and that's something that I think he's going to have to continue to work on, really being able to hit his guys over the middle and down the football field with regularity. If the Cougs really want to make some noise in 2023, this was a team 7-6 on the year, but 4-5 in Pac-12 play. I think their biggest win was probably against Wisconsin week 2, beat them 17-14. But all the big games, that they went up against, 3-point loss against Oregon. They lost to USC, 4-point loss to Utah. Washington ultimately pulled away at the end there, and then they lost the bowl game, the LA Bowl against Fresno State. So this is a team that I think has some potential. I think there's a lot of question marks there, especially at the skill position. They get Nakia Watson, the running back, 6 foot, 215 pounds, 769 yards and 9 touchdowns a season ago. I think that's the guy that they really have to kind of lean on a little bit. A guy that I think right around a little over 5 yards per carry. He's the guy that could definitely tip the 1,000-yard mark and could garner some consideration for some of the all-star games. A lot of question marks there at the receiver spot. I think Kyle Williams is probably the guy that we're going to be talking about most. They're from UNLV. The other guy, Josh Kelly, they're both juniors, but Kyle Williams and Josh Kelly, they're both 6'1", 190 pounds. They're really going to be relied upon to make a lot of the plays. I think probably the best offensive lineman. They returned 4 starters. Best offensive lineman, maybe Connor Gomnis, their center, 6'5", 290 pounds, only a junior. He'll be back for another year, but he'll be the guy that's holding it down in the middle. I think Ron Stone, the 6'3", 235-pound defensive end, and Brendan Jackson, his running mate, 6'4", 255. Brendan Jackson had 6 sacks a season ago, but with Ron, he's another guy that's consistent, not as flashy as Brendan Jackson, but a guy that just is solid there. A guy that would have to be a 34 outside linebacker, a little undersized, but he's a guy to definitely keep an eye out for. Brennan Jackson is coming back for his 6th and final season. So he's a guy that's going to be interesting to just kind of watch his journey. Ron Stone as well, 6-year senior. So you got that veteran leadership on that defensive side of the football. I think in the secondary you have Chow Smith-Wade, a guy that has a chance to be a star. 5'11", 180 pounds. He's a guy that teams just really didn't want to throw his way. He was a guy that had excellent ball skills, showing that he has that talent there on the outside. The free safety, Sam Lockett, had 3 interceptions this season, goes 6'1", 205. And then Jayden Hicks, redshirt sophomore, 6'3", 210 pounds. He's another guy that, the size is definitely appealing. You want to see how he can move there on the back end of the defense. They do get a couple of transfers in Devin Richardson and Ahmad McCullough from Texas and Maryland, respectively. Both about 6'2", 230 pounds. They've got to replace Dayon Henley, a guy that I thought was just an absolute stud on the roster for them a season ago. I think there's some talent, but they're really unproven. The guys that I do like, obviously, are going to be Jackson, Stone, Smith, Wade, Hicks, and Lockett. But again, I think the team lacks some depth. That's really going to be a huge struggle point there for Jake Dickert. But I think Washington State's a team that's going to make a bowl game again this year and at least make some things interesting in quite a few of the games. Anybody that has to travel up to the Palouse, that they're going to be in for a game there in Martin Stadium. I think that's going to be anytime you see that on the schedule, that's going to be a cause for concern if you're an opposing team coming in there, having to go to the Palouse. Arizona, Jedd Fisch. I really love what Jedd Fisch is doing out there. They did miss the bowl game, 5-7 record, but man, this is a gutty team. They've got Jayden DeLora, the undersized quarterback, 6 foot, 205. Now DeLora is a junior. Did put on 25 pounds this offseason, which I think is staggering. But this guy, he's elusive in the open field, has a pretty darn good arm, and I think he'll be throwing to Jacob Cowing, the 5'11", 175-pound senior, a guy that I think could be the top slot receiver in this year's draft class. Cowing is absolutely a top 10 wide receiver in this draft class. Not the biggest guy, but look, he has back-to-back years with over 1,000 yards, followed up that 2021 season at UTEP where he had over 1,300 yards, 19.6 yards per reception and 7 touchdowns, 85 catches, just over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. He was really kind of playing that second fiddle to Dorian Singer. Worked a lot of those underneath routes, but very sudden with the route running. He's the guy that I expect to have a big year. I think when you look at Teteroa McMillan, he's a guy that could be an absolute stud for them as well. 6'5", 205. Caught 8 touchdown passes as a freshman. He's a guy, only a sophomore, but he's really the future at the position. And Tanner McLaughlin, their tight end, is another guy that I think has a chance to make some noise in his final year at Arizona. Came in first year in 2022, 34 catches, 456 yards, 2 touchdowns, decent blocker, excellent pass catcher. So he's a guy to keep an eye out for sure. And then there's Michael Wiley, 6 foot, 210 pounds. Gary Brightwell has been able to carve out a niche for himself there at the next level. And I think Michael Wiley has a chance to be able to do the exact same thing. I mean, he's got good size, 771 yards and 8 touchdowns a season ago. I think he runs with some physicality, has some decent speed as well. A guy that, I'll tell you, it feels like he's been there at U of A for quite a while. This will be his 5th year there. First year where he went over 100 carries, so not a lot of wear on those legs. 95 receptions in his career as well, so definitely a guy that can catch the football out of the backfield. And then when you look at the offensive line, they returned 3 starters, but the guy is Jordan Morgan, 6'6", 320 pounds. A guy that I think could have considered coming out for the draft, but a knee injury really slowed him down. And so he's going to be back. Glad to see that he's healthy. So he'll be a guy that is really going to be holding down the left side of that line, and a guy that I think is poised to not only make some noise in Pac-12 play, but could be an early day 2 pick for the draft. Defensively, very young group. They only returned 3 starters from a season ago. And I don't know that any of those guys are guaranteed starters. Maybe Jacob Manu, the linebacker, the sophomore linebacker, undersized guy, but makes a lot of plays. 5'11", 220 pounds. I think you've got Trayton Stukes, the nickelback, who's 6'2", 190. He might be a guy to keep an eye on. Gunnar Maldonado, the safety on the back end, 6 foot, 195 pounds. Oren Patu is an intriguing guy who's 6'4", 235 pounds, a guy from Cal that I enjoyed watching play. He just didn't get enough action, enough playing time. I think that's why he ultimately decided to transfer to Arizona. I think he'll be a day one starter for them on the outside. He'll be someone to keep an eye out for, see if he can put some pressure on the quarterback. I think Arizona defensively is going to struggle. I think offensively they'll be able to move the ball and be able to keep themselves in some games because of that. Let's see. Next, I think, let's talk about Cal. Why not? Let's talk about the Cal Bears and what you have there with Justin Wilcox. Wilcox now in his 7th year with the Bears. Obviously, we don't know where they're going to be next year, but they've got an exciting running back in Jayden, only a sophomore, 6 foot, 200 pounds, over just under 900 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns. The big question mark is who's the quarterback going to be. It looks like it's going to be Sam Jackson the fifth, who's a 5'11", 195 pounder. Really an undersized quarterback. But you have Jake Spavital. Look, Jake Spavital, has worked with a lot of different quarterbacks with a lot of different sizes. Johnny Manziel, Kyler Murray have worked with him. So I think that's really what's going to be interesting. See if he can kind of work things in there. I think that's where the Bears could struggle. But you've got Jeremiah Hunter, a 6'2", 200-pound receiver, 60 receptions, 965 yards, 5 touchdowns, a guy that could decide to enter the draft. I think he's got pro potential there on the outside. This is a group that's also returning all 5 starters up front. I think the center, Matthew Cindric, is probably the best of the bunch, 6'4", 300 pounds, a guy that could play his way into late day 3 consideration. I think he's a fringe top 10 center. I don't think a center outside the top 10 is going to get drafted, so I think he's a guy that has to have a big year. Brett Johnson up front, 6'5", 295, was a guy that I thought, he's missed, with hip injuries and knee injuries. He's finally back, and it sounds like he's going to be healthy. The medicals certainly have to check out for him, but at 6'5", 295, he definitely looks the part. And when he's healthy, he's the guy that can wreak some havoc. But look, only played in 4 games in 2020. Didn't see the field in 2021 or 2022. So really looking forward to seeing if he can get back out on the field and see what type of player he can really be. I think you also look at Jackson Sermon there in the middle of the defense, 6'2", 245 pounds. The leading tackler from a season ago, 104 tackles, has a nose for the football, flies around. He'll be in his 6th year as well. The son of Peter Sermon. He's a guy that I think plays a lot like his dad. Tough as nails. Going to be a guy that's going to make some plays there. I think Noel Williams is going to be interesting. 6'1", 195-pound junior, the transfer from UNLV. I think Noel Williams is a guy that has made some plays for the Rebels. Veteran experience, so that's something that I think is definitely going to play well for them. 5 interceptions, 9 pass breakups in his career. They needed a guy on the outside to make some plays, and he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to do that. I think Patrick McMorris made a great decision transferring to Cal from San Diego State, looking to follow in the footsteps of Daniel Scott, who was drafted 6 foot, 210 pounds. This guy I thought was the best player on San Diego State's defense, not named Jonah Tavai. But look, a year removed from a 90 tackle year with 4 interceptions and 9 pass breakups. 2022 was kind of a downer year for San Diego State in a lot of ways. And I think you also saw that with the play from McMorris, but I think he's looking to really bounce back and try to make some plays there for Cal. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do there in the Pac-12 and Power 5 opponents. Cal, when you look at their team, they take on Auburn on September 9th. That's 2nd game of the year. It doesn't get any easier. In a couple of weeks after that, they take on Washington at Washington. They have Oregon State on their schedule, Utah, USC. They travel to Autzen Stadium with Oregon. They finish out the year going to UCLA. So I think it's going to be a long year there for Justin Wilcox, especially if they can't get the quarterback play going. After Cal, we've got to talk about Arizona State. This is a team that it ultimately sounds like the starter is going to end up being the freshman Jayden Rashida. Obviously, had an impressive spring. Ends up taking over for Drew Pine, who was 8-2 as a freshman for the Irish last year. But the freshman is going to take over at that spot. I think when you look at this group, I think Elijah Badger is intriguing. 70 catches, 866 yards, and 7 touchdowns a season ago, 6'2", 190 pounds. He's going to be the weapon on the outside. Then at that tight end position, Jalen Conyers, he's 6'4", 265, the junior. This guy's a basketball player. That's really when you watch him play, that's kind of how he plays the position. And a guy that's going to attack the football in the air, excellent hands, going to be a red zone option. A guy that transferred from Oklahoma, was a receiver there in 2020, bulked up, and this last year, 422 yards through the air and 5 touchdowns. He's absolutely going to be a weapon for them. I feel confident about that. The offensive line, I think there's going to be some question marks up front. See exactly what's going to happen there. The running game, they also have to replace Xavier Valladay, a guy that rushed for just under 1,200 yards. They do get Cameron Scattibo, the transfer from Sac State. He's going to be a guy that was 8th in the rushing, FCS a season ago. He'll likely be the guy to start. But again, some question marks all over the place. I think Aaron Frost, the senior, a guy that transferred in from Nevada, I want to say, if I remember off the top of my head. I didn't have it here in my notes. But, Nevada, he's a guy of veteran presence up front. He'll be someone that I think is going to help shore up the line a little bit. 6'5", 310 pounds. Gets a little bit closer to home, I think. From Reno to Tempe. He went to school at Long Beach Poly in Long Beach, California. And so he's the guy that I think may end up being the top offensive lineman in their group. When you look at the defense, I think this is another defense that's really green. I think Clayton Smith from Oklahoma has a chance to have a breakout year there at that defensive end spot. I think Chris Edmonds, Jordan Clark in the secondary are a couple of guys that are draft eligible to really keep an eye on as well. Travion Brown, a linebacker who's 6'3", 230 pounds. He's the guy that I think may be the most intriguing of the group. Really a guy that you want to see. Came in from Washington State and had 119 tackles, 7 going for loss, but a guy that really had to split time with Deion Henley. So obviously he's not going to see the field a ton in that situation. I just think Kenny Dillingham, it's going to take him a couple of years to really get not only the talent on offense that he's looking for, but also on the defensive side of the football. So I think this is going to be a tough year for Arizona State. Same goes for Stanford. This is a team that's kind of in a tailspin, and they lose David Shaw, their longtime head coach. He decides that he's going to resign. Ultimately, you've got Troy Taylor, who's coming in from Sac State. Really all kinds of success there, especially on the offensive side of the football. Tanner McKee moved on to the NFL. Ari Patu, 6'4", 216, is going to be your starting quarterback. The guy that threw just 9 passes a season ago for 65 yards. I think the passing attack is going to struggle. But you do get E.J. Smith, Emmitt Smith's son, 6 foot, 210 pounds. He's a guy that just, again, he needs to stay healthy. It's one of the things that it sounds like we keep talking about. Missed all but 2 games, but with 6.9 yards per carry in the 30 rushes that he had. I thought he played well against USC, but, man, he just needs to stay on the football field. They're very young at the skill position, so that's, I think, going to be a work in progress. They're going to struggle a little bit there. They lost Drake Nugent, their pivot, who transferred over to Michigan. But I think the guy that is going to be the top target is Benjamin Urasek. 6'5", 232, tremendous athlete at the tight end position, over 1,100 yards and 4 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. A guy that, for as good as he is as a pass catcher and a guy that can stretch the field a little bit, he's not just the guy that's going to catch the underneath throws. He's a legit weapon on the outside. All Pac-12 second teamer. he struggles as a blocker. That's really the biggest thing that I think is going to keep him from really being that upper echelon tight end. But I think he has a chance to end up having a really breakout year with Troy Taylor. If he becomes the focal point of that offense, I think you could really see a lot of big things from Benjamin Yurosek and continue to move up draft boards. I think David Bailey is an interesting guy for next year's draft class, 6'3", 240 pounds, an edge rusher, a stand-up edge guy that's going to look to get after the quarterback coming off the edge. Had 2.5 sacks, led the team in terms of the returners in tackles with 46. But again, they only have 3 returning starters up front, and essentially, when you look at the back end of that defense, that's where they're pretty great. That's really going to be the big issue. I think Gaithan Bernadelle coming in from FIU. This is a guy that he was the first undergrad transfer in Stanford football history to enroll mid-year. I thought that was an interesting take that Athlon Sports shared. But 103 tackles a season ago, 8 tackles for loss, a sack and a half at FIU. So he's obviously going to be that leader in the middle of that defense. Only a junior, so he'll have a couple of years of eligibility, but he's the guy that I think everyone needs to really keep an eye out for Stanford on the defensive side of the football. He's a guy that has a chance to be a stud. Both he and David Bailey have a great chance to really be breakout stars for that program. And then Colorado. This was a team that obviously they were desperate. They were absolutely desperate to bring something to the fold, something to the table. When you go 1-11, your only win was against Cal, a team that really struggled last year. You know that you've got your workout cut out for you. So what do? They bring in Prime, Deion Sanders, coming from Jackson State, and he brings his son Shedeur Sanders with him, one of the top quarterbacks in the FCS, and a guy that is going to be a playmaker there at the quarterback spot. 6'2", 215 pounds, has a chance to be a top 10 quarterback because of his elusiveness, his ability to really not only go through his progressions, but be able to manipulate the pocket, buy time as a passer. The athleticism is also apparent with his ability to run the football. I think this is a team as well when you look at a guy like Alton McCaskill, the running back. Ultimately, the question was, is he going to stay at Houston? What's going to happen with him? 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's going to Colorado. 961 yards, 16 touchdowns, 21 receptions a season ago for Houston as a true freshman. So I don't think he's draft eligible, but that's definitely a huge pickup for them. Kavasier Smoke is another guy that we're going to see there. He is a senior, 5'9", 210 pounds. And when you're talking about Kavasier, he was a guy that was durable. Played in 5 seasons there. With the Wildcats, not much of a factor in the passing game. Really was kind of a backup running back, if you will. So I think he'll be a nice 1-2 punch there with Alton McCaskill. I think the receiving core, they bring in some new guys. Look, Deion Sanders brought in a ton of guys in the transfer portal, and I think that's something that really says a lot. Kavasier Smoke shared the time with Chris Rodriguez, who's the big physical back. Now he's got a guy like Alton McCaskill, who's more of an explosive playmaker there on the outside. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that fits into play. Receiver-wise, obviously you've got Travis Hunter, a guy that's going to be playing both on the offensive and defensive side of the football at receiver and corner. One of the most exceptional players, a guy that, 5-star guy going to Jackson State. Just doesn't happen very often. That's the Deion Sanders effect. Jimmy Horn coming in from USF. He'll be a guy to keep an eye on at 5'10", 175 pounds. And then also the tight end, Sidhu Traore, coming in from Arkansas State. He has the potential to be a breakout star as well. 6'4", 223 pounds, going to be a weapon there on the outside as a pass catcher. I mean, for the Red Wolves, what didn't this guy do? 50 catches, 655 yards, 4 touchdowns. He and Travis Hunter, I think, could really have huge years there with Shedeur Sanders to win the football. And look, I think Sanders is a guy, the poise in the pocket. I think, you really want to see what he can do elevating his game to the Pac-12. I think ultimately, if I'm Shedeur Sanders, I enter the draft next year, not with this loaded quarterback class. Come back for another year. Now you're going to get experience in a third conference, moving on to the Big 12. So Jackson State in the FCS, Colorado, in the Pac-12 and then Colorado again in the Big 12. I think that's really going to bode well for his draft stock overall, especially if he balls out all 3 seasons. Then you look here with the offensive line. They returned 3 starters. They've got Gerard Christian Lichtenhahn. This dude, holy cow, 6'10", 315 pounds, only a junior. The size is ridiculous. When you've got a guy that tall, pad level becomes a concern. But I'm curious to see what this guy can do. Only a junior. He'll probably be back for another year. He'll probably need that, working on that pad level. But he'll be somebody, at least if nothing else, for everybody to keep an eye out for and really watch how he performs. A lot of guys on the defensive side of the football. Good Lord. Jordan Dominic out of Arkansas is the guy that I think has a chance to be a dude on the interior of that line. A guy that started his career at Georgia Tech, that transferred to Arkansas, had 7.5 sacks for the Hogs a season ago. Let's see, 27 tackles for loss, 16.5 sacks in his career, and he was at 6'3", 235 at one point. He's up to about 250 now. So he'll be a guy that I think can be a talented performer there. You also have Taj Alston, another athletic defensive lineman, a guy that came in from West Virginia, 6'4", 245, 8 sacks in his career. Really his best year was 2021 with the Mountaineers, 11 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. He transfers in. Taylor Upshaw from Michigan is also there. A guy that, look, they were so deep there at the defensive end position. He kind of got lost in the mix. 6'4", 262 pounds. Just 5 sacks in his career. Like I said, didn't see the field a ton, so I think he was looking to transfer to where he could make more of an impact. Levante Bellamy transfers from Clemson. He's a guy that they're going to be looking to have a big year. 6', 235. Didn't really see a whole lot of action there at Clemson. Again, playing behind guys. I think that's really the thing that Deion Sanders was selling for these guys was, hey, you can come here and have a chance to play and earn your spot on the roster, but you have a chance to play. If you were playing behind guys, now's a chance for you to actually get out there and make it happen. And then Miles Slusher, the 6', 185-pound safety, transfers in from Arkansas, a guy that likes to play around the line of scrimmage. That's really where I see most of his game. He's more of a nickel back, but I think he's probably going to be a safety if you're talking about him potentially at the next level. Not a huge factor in the passing game, more of a box defender than anything else, which I think limits his draft stock. But when I look at Colorado, this is a team that could surprise. It's just a big question mark right now because there's so many transfers, there's so much chaos with this team. It may take Coach Prime a year or so to really get this roster going, but it's hard to bet against Prime. All the hype that he brings in, he ruffled a lot of feathers with a lot of people when he came in at Colorado and said, look, a lot of guys, you're going to be transferring out. I'm going to bring a lot of guys in. And ultimately, he wants to have his team in place. If you watch Swamp Kings, you've watched Urban Meyer, he wanted to bring his guys in. There was a lot of tough love there to ultimately, hey, these are going to be my guys. These are the guys that I know aren't going to quit, and these are the guys that I know we can rely on. So I don't blame Prime for doing it. Unfortunately, I think in the social media age, people are taking a lot of the videos. A lot of what was said there, I think rubs a lot of people the wrong way, which is a shame because I think at the end of the day, what he's doing was needed for the program to really help take a step forward. So now if we look at the Pac-12, the top games, there are going to be a lot of them. I think August 31st is the first one that you really have to keep an eye out for. That's going to be a Thursday night game. Florida heading to Utah. The big question mark is going to be Cam Rising's health. They don't have to worry about Anthony Richardson. And I really think Billy Napier's team, we don't know what's going to happen there with Graham Mertz at the quarterback spot. I think Jack Miller may end up taking over that spot at some point. That's going to be a game to watch. USC taking on Notre Dame in South Bend, October 14th, Notre Dame Stadium. Trojans snapped a 4-game losing streak to the Irish a season ago. I think this is going to be a huge game. Notre Dame Obviously, Joe Alt there at left tackle holding things down. You got Sam Hartman, the quarterback. There's a lot to like there with the Irish. They're going to have to figure out a way to slow down Caleb Williams, and SC is going to have to figure out a way to, for the defense to get out of their own way, frankly. Same day, you've got Oregon taking on Washington in Seattle. This is going to be a lot of fun. This was a game where the Huskies scored 10 points in the final 4 minutes to win 37-34. Penix versus Nix. Obviously, this is going to be one where who's going to be that quarterback that's going to take that next step and that leap. We may be able to kind of answer that question a little bit. Who's going to emerge out of this group? USC gets Utah at home. This has really been their nemesis the last couple of years. They lost to them. 2 out of the 3 losses a season ago were to Utah. October 21st is kind of redemption for them. Oregon travels to Utah on October 28th. Look, Utah, it's a tough place to play. Just ask USC, and they're at Salt Lake City, and Oregon gonna have to show that defense can slow down. Cam Rising. Can they be physical against that Utah? Not only their offensive line, but also their defense. USC hasn't played Washington very much over the last 5-6 years, but on November 4th, the Huskies travel to USC. You're going to see Penix Jr. taking on Caleb Williams, but I think this is also going to be a matchup where you see that offensive line. Can they hold up? Can they be dominant against the likes of Braylon Trice? Can they move Latuli Nasanoa off the point? Can they get to Zion, Tupuola Fatui, and really throw him off of his rush as well? That's going to be some big question marks. Can they also slow down Michael Penix Jr.? Can they put pressure on him? That offensive line really attack the interior more than anything else. I think Bear Alexander is a guy that they could be relying on to have a big day if you're the Trojans. On November 11th, Utah travels up to Seattle. Again, we've been talking about the same teams over and over, but this is really an exciting team. One of the best passing attacks against one of the better pass defenses from last year. Same day. This is going to be a fun day. November 11th, USC travels to Autzen Stadium, and this is a tough test for USC. They haven't won at Autzen since 2011, and you're talking about having to take on Washington, and then just a week later you're going to Oregon, and then a week after that you play UCLA at home. UCLA, look, they were bitter a season ago. Dorian Thompson-Robinson throwing that pick late against Corey Foreman. That defense really struggled to stop them. Foreman came up with the big play for the Trojans to beat UCLA. I think Chip Kelly is really looking to try to take on and beat their nemesis, their rival, crosstown rival for the bell. These are 2 teams that are going to be leaving for the Big Ten. So last matchup in the Pac-12. It's a storied tradition. That rivalry, it extends to the Big Ten, but the fact that it's going to be the last in the Pac-12, I think it's going to be meaningful for both programs. Washington travels to Oregon State. Watch out for the Beavers with DJ Uiagalelei throwing the football. Look, it's going to be in Corvallis. That's a sneaky game. If it's in November, there could be a lot of fog. Watch out for that. You've got the Civil War between Oregon State and Oregon on November 24th. And obviously also the Apple Cup, Washington State on November 25th. Rivalry games, throw the records out the window. Oregon State and Washington State could potentially be challenging Oregon and Washington State. That's going to be a toss-up there. Potentially 2 teams that are going to be duking it out for a Pac-12 title berth. And these are 2 teams, the Oregon State and Washington State. They're the teams that got left high and dry. They could be looking to take things and take their anger and aggression out against Oregon and Washington. The question is going to be, are these games going to continue with their move to the Big Ten? Can we still maintain some of these rivalries? That's going to be a huge question mark as we move forward. Really the college football landscape is changing like never before. Really, we're not going to see anything like this again. So cherish the Pac-12 while it is still here, because you blink and we'll be at the end of the season and it'll all be gone. Conference of Champions. It's really sad. As a lifelong Trojan fan, Trojan alum, I'm going to miss seeing the Pac-10 and then the Pac-12. It's just going to be weird not having that West Coast conference, being able to travel up and down the coast. That's really what was fun. A lot of the weekenders and being able to travel pretty easily. Now you're talking about more coast-to-coast travel. It makes it a little bit more difficult. So when you talk about week 0, we've already talked about the Trojans quite a bit. USC will get to showcase all of the weapons on offense. They get to show what Alex Grinch has been cooking up on defense. And really, Caleb Williams, his first step in defending that Heisman. Can he be the first back-to-back Heisman Trophy winner since Archie Griffin? It's hard to do. There's a reason why Archie Griffin was the only one to be able to do that. But USC taking on San Jose State. When you look at the Spartans, Chevan Cordeiro is a veteran, comes back, 6'1", 187 pounds, pretty good arm. A guy that came over to San Jose State from Hawaii, and a guy that kind of an up and down career, struggles with some accuracy at times, but Brennan is a solid coach. He's a guy that I think is going to be helping guide this offense a little bit. When you look at Chevan Cordeiro, I thought, second team All Mountain West. That was really kind of surprising, to be honest with you. What he did there at Hawaii, struggled at times, but just 59.3% completion percentage in his career. But look, 60%, over 3,200 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions through 22 there at Hawaii in 4 years there. So this is a guy that I think has improved under Brendan's guidance there with the Spartans. He has a chance to throw the football around a little bit. He's going to have 3 solid receivers in Justin Lockhart, Charles Ross, and the converted quarterback Nick Nash. So I think they'll be able to throw the football a little bit. And then Kyrie Robinson, look, he's a diminutive running back, but I think he's an explosive guy. He's only 5'7", but he is 89 pounds. Over 700 yards a season ago and 10 touchdowns. This is a guy who also has 73 receptions in his career. So he'll be someone to keep an eye on, especially against that defense that has struggled to tackle anybody. And then a guy to keep an eye on, too, is that tight end, Dominic Mazzotti, 6'4", 252, a junior. I think he can be a weapon in the passing attack. I think the defense, especially when you lose a guy like Viliami Fehoko to the NFL, that definitely hurts. This was a guy who was the Mountain West Player of the Year a season ago on the defensive side of the football. 19 tackles for loss, 9 sacks a season ago, 47 total tackles for loss, and 23 sacks in his career. He had his running mate, Cade Hall, as well. But when you look at Fehoko, look, he's in Dallas now. I believe he was a 4th-round pick. Yeah, number 129 overall. And when you lose him, you lose a guy in Cade Hall, who was another Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. That definitely stings, definitely hurts. I think the best guy coming back on the defensive side of the football is probably Trey Jenkins, their 5'11", 219-pound strong safety. I think he's very active, a guy that Caleb Williams is going to have to know where he is on the field. I think especially if he's throwing some of those deep balls from within the pocket, do a good job with the eye discipline, looking him off, because he's a guy that can make plays over the top. Physical, likes to play around the line of scrimmage as well. 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks a season ago. And then Chase Williams, 6'1", 198 pounds, senior, free safety. He's going to have his work cut out for him trying to slow down Caleb Williams. This guy actually was a Trojan, played there for 4 years, transferred to San Jose State in 2022, and a guy that, look, he knows the program really well. Really got his first chance to see a ton of action in 2022 there. Had a couple of interceptions, 3 pass breakups, so he's the other veteran on the back end of the defense that kind of stands out for me. And then their linebacker, Matthew Tago, is really going to be the guy in the middle, 6'2", 222 pounds. He and Jordan Cobbs, the junior linebacker, on the interior. Those are going to be the guys that I think San Jose State's going to rely upon. But I don't think USC is going to have too much of trouble moving the football against the defense. The big question mark really is just going to be, can that defense slow down anybody? And the first question is going to be answered there against Chevan Cordeiro and company there at San Jose State. I think getting a couple of these games under their belt for the Trojans is going to go a long way with their confidence. Another game that we're going to have to talk about here in Week 0 is Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish. That's the other ranked team that's going to be playing Week 0. And the Irish, they're going to be in Dublin, Ireland. and they're going to be taking on the Navy midshipmen. Obviously, you have Sam Hartman, 6'1", 210 pounds, the senior. This is the guy that I think the arm strength isn't really there. This is not a guy that's going to wow you with the arm at all. But 59.1% completion percentage in his career. 110 touchdowns, but 41 interceptions as well. So he's really going to have to clean some of that up. Gerard Parker, the offensive coordinator, he's taking over for Tommy Rees, who moved on to Alabama. They've got Audric Estime, the running back, big, physical dude, 5'11", 227 pounds, over 900 yards and 11 touchdowns a season ago. Chris Tyree, converted running back, diminutive guy, just 5'9". He'll be one of the top receivers there for them. Obviously, Joe Alt is a potential top 10 talent there at left tackle, 6'8", 315 pounds. Blake Fisher on the opposite side, want to see what he can do there, 6'6", 310 pounds. Those are going to be your focal points on the offensive line. I think Riley Mills, the 6'5", 298-pound defensive tackle, is going to be one of the guys that Notre Dame is going to be looking at. You talk about Bruce Feldman and the freaks list, you have to go there as well. 6 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, put on 14 additional pounds. He's actually 306 now. Bench press 450 pounds, did 225 for 30 reps, squatted 635, and then also hit 26.64 miles per hour on the GPS. Vertical leap is 33 inches, did 31 pull-ups, just an absolute physical freak. But can he get pressure on the quarterback with consistency? That's going to be a huge question mark. They return veteran linebackers JT Bertrand and Jack Kaiser. I think Jack Kaiser has probably got the most potential there. 6'1", 223 pounds. I think Benjamin Morrison's the guy we're going to be talking about next year's draft. 6 foot, 185 pound corner. The guy he'll be teaming up with is Cam Hart, 6'2", 202. Cam Hart, to me, I think is a guy that he has tremendous length. When he stays healthy, he's a guy that I think can be a playmaker. Just need to keep him on the field and keep his head in there. 13 pass breakups in his career, a couple of interceptions as well. He's the guy that I think may end up having to move to safety at the next level. But Notre Dame, they get to take on the midshipmen, as I mentioned, and Navy. They actually have a couple of guys that I'm really interested in watching, and one of those is going to be their fullback, Daba Fofana. Daba is 5'8", 205, but this is a guy that is a physical runner, and I think there's a little bit of potential there. In 2022, 769 yards on the ground and 6 touchdowns. Only a junior, but you love the physicality with which he runs. And then defensively, you've got Jacob Busick, the 6'4", 256-pound defensive end, had 6 sacks a season ago. He's the guy that's really going to be trying to wreak havoc against Sam Hartman. Would love to see him going up against Joe Alt. You want to make a name for yourself, see what you can do there against a guy like Joe Alt. But I think this is really going to be a week 0 where we're going to be watching a lot of the Conference USA. That's really where we're going to see a lot of that. And, Conference USA and the American Athletic Conference, but it's really going to be Conference USA dominated for week 0. And I think that's really a good thing for a lot of these programs, being able to showcase what they can do on this stage. And, I think one of the games that I'll be looking at is UTEP. UTEP is going to be taking on Jacksonville State. That's going to be in Jacksonville, Alabama. But when I look at UTEP, I think Deion Hankins is a junior running back, 6 foot 229, has good size, good power on the offensive line. The right guard, Elijah Klein, 6'4", 319 pounds. He's a guy that has a chance to develop into potentially a guy that could make a transition to the NFL. But then you look at Praise Amewule. He's 6'3", 250 pounds. He's probably one of the better edge rushers in the group of 5, and that's why I want to tune in. I want to see what he can do and see if he can build upon his 2022 performance there with the Miners. And a guy that, he knows how to get after the quarterback. 16 sacks in his career, 30 tackles for loss. A guy that I think just needs to continue to try to put some of all that together. But you love his ability to use his length to his advantage. 19 pass breakups, 4 fumble recoveries, 4 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries in his career. So he's a guy that I think is going to be a lot of fun to watch there for the Miners. And then at Jacksonville State, I think the running back, Anwar Lewis, is the guy to make mention of. He's 5'8", 180 pounds, a guy that ran for over 800 yards a season ago. He's a guy that I think is going to be fun to watch. And then you look at a guy like Chris Hardy on defense, the defensive end, 6'2", 260 pounds, 15.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks. Likely going to come back for another year. Could potentially transfer through the transfer portal, but a guy that I think teams will really want to keep an eye out for. He's a guy that I'm going to be interested in watching. They also got a transfer in safety, Colby Fuqua from Auburn, so I think he'll be a guy that we'll want to keep an eye on as well for the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. Staying in Conference USA, you've got New Mexico State. The Aggies, this was a team, look, Jerry Kill, 7-6. I don't think anybody really saw that coming. I think Cordell David, the receiver on the outside, 6'3", 195 pounds. He's a guy to watch out for. But Diego Pavia, the quarterback, is a guy that if you're looking for an underdog story, this is the guy to really keep an eye out for. The bowl game performance in the Quick Lane Bowl, he was the MVP, upset win, and also took out Liberty. With him at the helm, he's a guy that's going to be the unquestioned leader there, throwing the football. 13 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Needs to cut down on the mistakes. Is mobile, can get outside the pocket. He's a guy that I think is going to be fun to watch there for New Mexico State. Defensively, I think Keontae Glidden, the 6', 190-pound safety from Wyoming, he'll be the guy to watch on the back end of the defense there for the Aggies. They're taking on the UMass Minutemen, and I'll tell you, the guy that I'm really excited to watch is going to be Billy Wooden, the defensive tackle, 6'1", 310 pounds, the junior. This guy is ultra athletic and a guy that I think can really make some plays for the Minutemen. A guy that, 16.5 tackles for loss, a guy that looks to make a lot of plays around the line of scrimmage, can be physical at the point of attack. A guy that just needs to stay healthy. That's a big question mark for him. Can we keep him on the field? If they can, he's a guy that I think, especially under Coach Don Brown, can continue to develop and could be a guy that, the UMass faithful can really get excited about. He's a guy that, again, is going to really be counted upon to get some pressure on Diego Pavia early and often. I think maybe the most competitive game is going to be in San Diego, Snapdragon Stadium. You're going to have San Diego State taking on Ohio. And with Ohio first, you've got Curtis Rourke, a guy that is super athletic, the 2022 MAC Offensive Player of the Year. Tore his ACL late last season. Did participate in some drills in the spring. Going to see what happens there. But he's 6'5", 216 pounds. Very athletic as a quarterback. You saw Nathan Rourke, his brother, what he was able to do for Jacksonville in the preseason. And Curtis Rourke is a guy that I think his brother's the better runner, but Curtis is the better passer. 69% completion percentage, over 3,200 yards, 25 touchdowns, 4 interceptions to go along with 245 yards on the ground and 4 scores. Curtis Rourke is a real deal. He's a guy that just want to see how he comes back from the knee injury. In this draft class with all the quarterbacks, he's the guy that people haven't been talking about. Hopefully he can return from that knee injury and start to make a true impact for the Bobcats. A guy that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Sam Wiglusz, one of the better group of 5 wide receivers, 5'11", 188 pounds, a guy that just knows how to get open. Transfer from Ohio State, didn't really see much action there. 877 yards and 11 touchdowns in his first full season. Really seeing the field, seeing action. He's the guy that I think has a chance to end up making a roster. Will he get drafted? No, but I think he's a guy that we'll just see. One of those types that you don't expect much out of him, but then he ends up making the roster, making your team, and that's something that you're really talking about. And then you've got Jacoby Jones on that roster as well at the receiver spot, 777 yards, Receiving, 17.3 yards per reception and 6 touchdowns. He's going to be a guy that's going to be a little bit more of that vertical threat. And Sia Bangura is a 6 foot, 200-pound sophomore, freshman of the year there in the MAC play with over 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns. Also caught 27 passes. So if he can get going in the ground game, then I think that's also going to set things up well for Curtis Rourke and that passing attack. So I think Ohio, they return 5 starters on the defensive side of the football. So I think there is something for San Diego State to try to take advantage of. Jalen Maiden, the quarterback, 6'3", 220 pounds. A guy that I think struggles at times to be consistent. Did throw for over 2,000 yards a season ago. Did have 10 interceptions. So it has to cut down on the mistakes. That's going to be huge. You've got Brady Hoke there as the head coach. What's going to happen there? They've lost some guys at the skill position. So seeing some of that talent. But Mark Redmond, the tight end, he's 6'6", 250 pounds, big number 81. He's a guy to watch out for. I think he's a guy that we could see making plays for them. On the defensive side of the football, I think Garrett Fountain is the defensive end. He'll be a guy that I think really is going to be asked to be that pass rusher that Jonah Tavai was for them a season ago. With Garrett Fountain, again, 6'4", 250 pounds, 12 tackles for loss, 6 sacks in the last 2 seasons for the Aztecs. He's a guy that really needs to elevate his game this year. Up front, they also get Samuela Tuihalamaka, the 6'1", 305-pound defensive tackle from Oklahoma State. A guy that can be physical and stout at the point of attack. Maybe the biggest pickup is Cody Moon, New Mexico stud, 6'3", 200 pounds. Really, what position is this guy going to play? That's the biggest question mark, right? Linebacker, but he's really undersized at that linebacker position. But for the Lobos, 105 tackles, 9.5 for loss, 4.5 sacks, 4 pass breakups as well. I think he could be a special linebacker for them. One other name to make mention of will be Cooper McDonald, the linebacker, 6'3", 245, started his career at Washington. Last year with the Aztecs, had 41 tackles for the team. He'll be the other guy that I think on that linebacking core that they're really going to be looking to. A guy that I think can make some plays. And then Cedarius Barfield in the secondary, 5'11", 195 pounds. He and Devon Celestine should be the playmakers there in the defense that they love to run there, which is kind of a 3-3-5 stack formation. So it'll be fun to watch. I think Ohio with that offense, don't be surprised if we get some action early on and Ohio upsets Brady Hoke, San Diego State and company. I think it could absolutely happen. Then you look at Vanderbilt. We get some SEC action. Vanderbilt, the team that really is kind of struggling to bring up the rear in that conference, but we get to see what they can do. AJ Swan, the quarterback, 6'3", 220 pounds, but Will Shepherd is going to be the guy, one of the better receivers in all of college football. Just a guy that has excellent hands. He's a good route runner, good speed as well. 6'3", 195 pounds. And he's going to be the guy that they want to get the ball to early and often. 776 yards and 9 touchdowns a season ago. Second team All-SEC. He's a guy that can be a weapon there on the outside. Watch the route running ability as well. He's a guy, again, that I'm going to be excited to see play. And, I'm going to be tuning in, if nothing else, than just to watch him and see what he can do. They returned 4 starters on the offensive line. So I think that's something else that Hawaii's going to have to contend with. To Ricky Wright, he's 6'4", 220 pounds at safety. 3 interceptions, 7 pass breakups a season ago to go along with 55 tackles. A guy that likes to play around the line of scrimmage but has the ball skills as well. I think he could have a breakout year at that strong safety position for the Commodores. And look, they're going up against Hawaii. This is a team that really has a lot to play for. You see the devastation in Maui with the fires, and this is a team that's playing for all of the Hawaiian Islands. And you think that there's pressure because they're playing for them, but no, there's the love. The Islander Love and the Aloha. You're talking about the Ohana there, and that's going to be a team that really is going to be sticking together. And I think that's going to be powerful, to say the least. Offensively, Braden Shager is going to be the guy that they're going to rely upon at the quarterback spot. 6'3", 220 pounds. I think there's a lot of unproven. Not only on at the skill position players, but offensive line. They only returned one starter from a season ago. Defensively, I think they're in much better shape. You look at a guy like Logan Taylor. He's the guy that flies around and makes a lot of plays. 12.8 tackles per game. A little undersized again at 6'1", 215 pounds, but a guy that you're going to see look to make a ton of plays there. And then Isaiah Tufaga, 6'1", 230. He had a season-ending injury mid-season. He's back, so he'll be a guy that I think a lot of people are going to be focusing on. They run that 4-2-5 defense there for Hawaii. I just think that the Commodores in SEC play, there's just going to be too much for Hawaii to really handle. And so it'll be a good showcase for Vanderbilt to really show people where Clark Lee has that program. And then finally, we go back to Conference USA play, and really the game that's going to be kicking off the latest, 8 p.m. Central. It's going to be Louisiana Tech and FIU in Ruston, Louisiana. And when you look at Louisiana Tech, they bring in Hank Bachmeier as their quarterback, a guy that I thought struggled at times at Boise State, not only with health, staying on the field, but also with just consistency overall. But you look at a guy like Smoke Harris. He's undersized, 5'6", 189 pounds, but over 2,000 yards receiving, 26 touchdowns in his career. And then you look at the return ability. I think he can be dynamic, very shifty, explosive in the open field. He's a guy that I think could end up finding his way onto an NFL roster. Another guy that's going to be interesting, only a sophomore, is Cyrus Allen, 6', 177 pounds, 22.7 yards per reception. Really a big play weapon. They also get Baylor transfer Craig Squirrel Williams, and I think that's one of the things that was really a lot of fun was watching a guy named Squirrel running around for Baylor, and he was only 5'8", 173 pounds, but I think he played 4 years there at Baylor, 557 yards on the ground and 11 receptions as well. He's going to be sharing the backfield with Marquise Crosby, the sophomore. So good 1-2 punch there at the running back position. Those will be guys that I think you'll definitely want to key in and keep an eye out for. They've got a couple of linebackers. I think Deshaun Hall will probably be playing on the defensive line, but he's really kind of a linebacker at 6'3", 246. And Hugh Davis, 6', 225. Junior and senior respectively. I think these are two guys that you're going to see looking to make some plays there at that linebacker position. Hugh Davis, 76 tackles a season ago. And then Miles Hurd. This was a guy that played at Stephen F. Austin, comes in and led his team in tackles the last 2 seasons. He'll be someone, man, in that safety position, 5'10", 195 pounds. Good instincts, and a guy that looks to fly around and make some plays. Louisiana Tech, I think they'll have an easy go of it going up against FIU. I mean, obviously, we've already mentioned that Gathan Bernadelle, probably the best pro prospect that FIU has. He's already transferred, and so we won't get to see him perform there. So really, what does FIU have? And really the answer is this is a team that's going to be struggling to do much this season. I think this is a program that's really struggling to find their identity. Mike McIntyre there, 4-8 a season ago. They may go less than that this year. But I think really when you're looking at this team, Donovan Manuel, 6'1", 230 pounds. He's a guy that at the linebacker spot that I think has a chance to earn a spot on a practice squad at the next level. 97 tackles, 8.5 going for loss a season ago. And then they also have Sean Peterson, a guy at the linebacker position who knows how to get after the quarterback a little bit. Let's see, 8 tackles for loss, 6 sacks a season ago for that defense. So I think those are the two guys for me defensively that I'm going to be looking for. And really defensively, they return a lot of guys. I think there's 8 starters back on that defense. So I think the defense will be better. I think they'll struggle, though, to move the football. They return just 2 starters on the offensive line. Some question marks there in at the skill position as well. So it'll be interesting to see if FIU can get anything going. I think ultimately Louisiana Tech, Sonny Cumbie and company, they end up running away with it. So if you're scoring at home, I think what you'll see is wins by number 13 Notre Dame, UTEP, New Mexico State, Ohio, Vanderbilt, number 6 USC, and Louisiana Tech to close out week 0 of the college football season. So football season is here. We will do kind of a group of 5 introduction along with a recap of week 0, what I saw out there on the field. So over the next few days, we'll do both of those things. We'll break down week 0. We'll also take a look at what the group of 5 is going to look like. And then what are the matchups going to be for the full slate of games going into opening weekend? We've got the holiday, Labor Day weekend. It really marks the first week of college football. I can't be any more excited. The games really kick off on the 31st, and they go through the entire weekend. That's why we love the opening weekend of college football. You're going to see a lot of intriguing matchups, and we're just getting started. So stick with us for the entire season. It's going to be a fun ride. And until next time, everyone, for ReadyForTheDraft.com, this has been the Ready for the Draft podcast. I've been your host, Gregg Schutze. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the first weekend of college football. And until next time, I am out of here.